Hello everyone, welcome to Aurora Public Library's Reader's Corner. I am Stacy and this is Justine. We're gonna just wait about a minute, let some people come in. I hope that everyone's having a good Friday. How are you, Justine? Are you having a good Friday?
I am having a great Friday, Stacy. I'm super excited to talk about this book today. I love graphic novels like no other.
Yeah, I was excited that this was the next genre.
Me too. I mean, 300 pages is like daunting if you're reading, like an actual novel, but when it's a graphic novel, you can kind of read it in one sitting. It's really approachable, super good for reluctant readers, all that good stuff.
Great. And you still get the same impact as you would a regular novel, so special place.
The best of both worlds.
All right. So for those of you who just joined in, this is Reader's Corner. I'm Stacy and this is Justine. A little bit about Reader's Corner for those of you who might be new to the series. Reader's Corner is a weekly book review where we read and discuss a book from a different genre. We post all of the book choices online on our calendar so you can read ahead and join us in our discussions as we read and discuss the book. All of the books are on Hoopla, so all you really need is a place to read them and your library card number. This week, we read the novel Commute, it's backwards, but an illustrated memoir of female shame by Erin Williams, which is both a graphic novel and a memoir. Before we dive in, I do want to give a quick trigger warning. This book talks about some heavy topics, some traumatic experiences, so it might be offensive, it might be triggering to some people. Just be aware as you're listening and if you decide to pick up this book. All right, so first let's talk about the genre. As me and Justine have both found out, graphic novels and memoirs have very loose definitions. Graphic novels are novels in comic strip format, which, yep. And memoirs are historical accounts or reflections of people through their personal knowledge. So some common themes between graphic novels is that they don't just rely on text to build a narrative. They use graphical elements such as panels, frames, the speech and thought bubbles to create and evoke a story in a reader's mind. Memoirs typically are told in first person. They're full of details, they're reflective, and a lot of times they try to offer new insights on certain subjects.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the summary. This is just the summary of the book that appears on Hoopla, and then tell you a little bit about Erin Williams, who's the author of this. So it's called Commute again. Hoopla says that it is an intimate, clever, and ultimately gut-wrenching graphic memoir about the daily decision women must make between being sexualized or being invisible. In Commute, we follow author and illustrator Erin Williams on her daily commute to and from work, punctuated by recollections of sexual encounters as well as memories of her battle with alcoholism, addiction, and recovery. As she moves through the world, navigating banal, familiar, and sometimes uncomfortable interactions with the familiar-faced strangers she sees daily, Williams weaves together a riveting collection of flashbacks. Her recollections highlight the indefinable moments when lines are crossed, and a woman must ask herself if the only way to avoid being objectified is to simply cease to draw any attention to her physical being. She delves into the gray space that lives between consent and assault and tenderly explores the complexity of the shame, guilt, vulnerability, and responsibility attached to both. And then the bio is Erin Williams, is a writer, illustrator, and researcher, cancer researcher, so that's really cool, living in New York. She's the co-author of the Big Fat Activity Book for Pregnant People and the Big Activity Book for Anxious People.
I just want to say that I don't know either of those books, but I'm interested in want to know what they are.
Me too.
Anxious people, like that's me.
That's me too.
Some social media reviews of the book. I feel like the social media reviews are really interesting. So Amazon gave it 4.5 out of 5. One of the reviews is, "This memoir is not an easy read, but it wouldn't be worth a read if it were. This graphic novel is moving, thought-provoking, painful, relatable, and in the end, hopeful. While many have not faced what Erin details, women are objectified nonstop, even when just going about our daily business. On some level, us women can all relate." And that was by Edelston. And Goodreads gave it a 3.69 out of 5. One of the reviews by Laura is, "This is a stream of consciousness of all," oh wait, "This is a stream of consciousness of a woman and how she feels she is represented in the world. Part of it is based on her commute back and forth to the office. Part of it is her thoughts on everything around her and how women are assaulted with the gaze of men." And Hoopla gave this a 4.5 out of 5, which is great. It's got really high reviews, but the reviews themselves I've noticed a lot of high stars and a lot of low stars, and there doesn't quite seem to be a lot in the middle. So I don't know, you noticed kind of a similar thing?
Definitely. It's like people seem to either absolutely love it or absolutely did not love it at all.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. It's like a really polarizing book, which, I mean, based on the summary, I wasn't necessarily surprised.
You don't watch, or you don't read, you don't read a memoir of female shame and not expect it to have
Controversy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Well,
I think,
talk about initial reactions.
I think that's always the best place to start. My initial reaction was I was pretty much hooked immediately. A lot of the negative reviews that I read were that the book started too slow. She spends too much time like talking about how she preps herself for the day. And I disagree with that, my own personal opinion. Because it may not be super action-packed, like she's getting ready, she's waking up, it's dark, she's checking her phone, putting on her makeup. But I just think it's really important, both to the story and to Erin as a person. It shows her wearing makeup, it demonstrates all the 16 steps she takes to, as she put it, let me see if I can find it. Basically just that she went through all of these steps. She wakes up at 5 a.m. to make herself look like she is not actually wearing any makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And she calls it self-care with quotes, because she doesn't do any of it for her. She's showing how much she puts in to present herself to other people. Specifically in this story, she's talking about men. So I don't know. I was hooked immediately. I connect with that, so I just understood where she was coming from. What was your initial reaction?
Absolutely. So I was also hooked pretty much immediately. I actually read it the first time in just one sitting, and then I went back and reread it because I liked it so much. I think one of the things I really enjoyed is like how unapologetic she is, and she refused to hide away from the difficult topics, and, you know, really allows herself to be vulnerable and, you know, even draw herself in these, you know, kind of graphic depictions of her life. A lot of her reactions that she has, especially to men that she's encountering on her commute, are ones that I have felt myself as a woman as well. And even like the men in my life have a hard time understanding like why I have an aversion to walking to the mailbox that's only 5 minutes away past dark, or why I like avoid public transit, especially if I'm going to be going alone. So I think Williams really hits the nail on the head with this. I could relate so much to her inner monologue. Just, you know, from deciding which man was safer to sit close to on the subway, to the discomfort of being stared at by strange men, and how it's just so hard to just simply exist as a woman.
I agree. Bittersweet. I like how you say that.
Yeah.
It is a novel that really shows just how hard it is to just exist
Yeah.
as a woman. which is terrible.
Yes.
Something that needs to be acknowledged and talked about at the same time.
Which is why this is a great novel if you want to know more about that.
Yeah, no, it's great as someone who relates to the topic, relates to the experiences that she has. It feels sort of, it's hard, but it's nice. I don't know how to word it. Nice to know that people are also in the same struggle.
Yeah, like there's solidarity in it. And
Thank you.
it's something that's almost universal to all women, no matter where you come from, which is like this great, I guess, binding factor that binds all of us.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a positive one, but we have to have those difficult conversations if we want to change anything. So I think that's great.
And I think it's probably, I mean, obviously, I don't know what it's like to read this as a cis male or anyone other than me, but I would imagine, and from reading the reviews, it's been pretty eye-opening for a lot of like men who may not realize how some things like come across or stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So since we were talking about genre, it's sort of difficult to talk about how this relates to the genre since they're both so like loosely defined. Since the memoir explores and reflects on her life, like this definitely covers that. And as a graphic novel, it does paint a narrative through the strategic use of illustrations and text. And so I think what we should talk about is the biggest theme of the book, which is the commodification and exploitation of women, particularly the topic of male entitlement to the female body. I think that this is shown, I mean, basically it's shown on every page, but it's shown in her private life and in her personal, it's shown in her private personal life and her public life. You know, you see it on her commute to work with how men react to her at the train station, how they interact with her when she's on the train. But it's also seen in her private interactions with men that she's been like trying to date, who ignore her when she expresses that what they're doing is not consensual. And I also think it's just seen through the internalized struggle of her constant need to be invisible to men, while also to validate her existence as a woman, she also needs to be seen and approved by men. It hits a lot.
It does.
Do you have any thoughts on the exploitation? I mean,
like, I think there's a couple of pages, like, I'm not trying to like do too many spoilers or anything, but there's a couple pages where it's like just like advertisements will have like a woman moving furniture in a bathing suit, which is such a strange thing. Like, to me, I would look at that and be like, are they advertising the bathing suit or are they advertising a moving company? Like, what is that about? But that's something that we do see all over the place, like women being objectified and women's bodies being used to sell like anything from furniture to burgers from Carl's Jr. I mean, it's quite strange.
Yeah, I feel like in terms of advertising, we've made a lot of progress as a society. I mean, if you look at the old advertisements from like the 50s and the 60s where they're like, so easy, a woman could do it. Like we've stepped away from that.
Okay, great. Progress.
But now it's oh, look at this thing next to this bikinied woman.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not really selling the product, you're selling the woman that goes with the product. So
exactly.
Yeah. And just like when we're not talking about advertisements, I mean, one of the scenes in the book that stood out to me a lot was when she's first standing at the train station and there's a guy and he's staring at her and he stares at her 4 separate times. And so the artist included his picture staring at her 4 different times.
Yeah.
Which I have sticky noted because it was like really important to me.
Yes,
But it was like,
one.
it's just such a conflict where she's like, I don't want the attention that this man is giving me, but at the same time, she spent so many pages before this putting on makeup and getting dressed and making sure that she was visible. So it's I feel like my brain is like, there's so much to talk about, and I don't know quite how to word it correctly.
There's a lot to unpack here that like goes way beyond like these pages that we've read.
Mm-hmm. So, and kind of in line with that, one of my favorite parts, it was a really small part, so I don't think a lot of people talked about it, but it's right in the beginning, and she says, I used to not wear makeup, but while I was pregnant and after I gave birth, I felt so invisible to men that part of me disappeared. And then it's her putting on her makeup with the little ghost that says disappeared. Oh. And I feel like that scene is really important to me. This just one panel page, because I used to wear a lot of makeup back when I was in my early 20s. And part of the reason why I stopped wearing makeup is because I didn't like the attention I was getting when I was walking places, or honestly, just even when I was at my job at the time. I would have people wait for me and try to follow me to like train stations after and try to like wait for me to hang out. And I realized that the days that I wasn't wearing makeup, it didn't happen as much.
Right.
And so whenever I tell people that story and like that part of my life, everyone goes, oh, really? And I'm like, so it disconnected with me because it made me feel that solidarity, that I'm not alone, that there's this big part of you that like wants to wear makeup because you want people to notice you, but then the attention that you're getting is unwanted, not consensual, and scary.
Definitely.
So
it's like, how can I have both? Is there a way to have both? It's hard.
Yeah.
My favorite part actually comes up in a discussion point later, so I'll save it for then. But I really liked that part as well. Could definitely relate to it too.
Which is our next point, how relatable this book is. Which I think we both related to it a lot as women. I mean, we've talked about it before, we're going to keep talking about it, but this book just hit a lot of topics that like have affected me as just someone trying to exist in the world and do my thing. I think even like the title, Commute, like I commuted to school for 7 years by the light rail, and I can say that 9 times out of 10, like there was something. It didn't necessarily have to be comments or really straightforward, but it would be like people staring, people moving closer to you. I mean, some people would like move closer, sit in front of me, and then start trying to ask me like my name, my age, where I go to school, what I'm studying. So it's crazy. It's crazy how much people deal with just trying to get to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's got one of the pages had a quote, I want you to understand what it's like to be constantly reminded of what you are, desirable and visible, or undesirable and invisible. With the first comes a constant and vague sense of threat. With the second comes loneliness. And this is what it means to be a woman in public. And yes.
Couldn't have said better myself.
Like, I can't express more like how true that is.
Definitely. And I feel like I said, it's so universal. So many women feel the exact same way. So like for someone to put it on the page is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can relate to a lot of what you said about like commuting, and I can relate to a lot of what Erin Williams discusses in the book as well. Like, I've been catcalled just going to the mailbox in the middle of the day. If I'm on the light rail alone, strange men will come up to me and either sit across or like right next to me and start an unwanted conversation. And like, even headphones won't deter them when it's like clearly I'm, you know, trying to be alone and in my own headspace, and they invade that. So I definitely can relate to those experiences as well.
I think that ties into I mean, it's all going to tie into the theme, but this thing in society and just like how people tend to function is that, how do I word it? Like, there's an entitlement to women's bodies. So even if you're sitting on the light rail, you have your headphones, you're reading a book, you're on your phone, people will still, and men specifically, will still come. They'll still try to get you to take your headphones off. Like, obviously you're not interested because you're doing something, you're talking to someone, you're listening to something. But now you've got to like play this game on, do I take out my headphones and be nice? Like, what's going to happen if I don't?
Mm-hmm.
If I keep my headphones in, is he going to get mad? And then when you're alone on a light rail, it's even worse because there's no one around. You can't leave.
Right. It's like, okay, I can get off at this stop, but like, is he going to follow me? Or
Which
if
happens.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. 100%. Or it's like you could get off at an unfamiliar stop and then not know like where you are. And
which then, like, even if he doesn't get off, now you're in a different dangerous situation of being alone somewhere in the city.
Yep.
Alone.
So it is very, very scary to be alone and lost and not knowing what to do and what decisions and what those consequences of those decisions are going to be. And we have to think about them literally every day.
Yeah. I think another point we had to talk about was the seen versus not seen, which I've already sort of brushed on, but the struggle of wanting to be, viewed by people, viewed by men, be attractive. There's this need, this innate need to be desired by other humans, but that attention is unwanted. It can be scary, it can be threatening, but then so you don't want it, you don't want the attention, but you do, but you don't.
Yeah. It's very uncomplicated and confusing.
Yeah, and it's a constant battle that I have, is I don't like attention. I don't want people to talk to me on the light rail necessarily, and but at the same time, there's this other part of me that's like, you're not wearing makeup. Like, men are gonna see that and they're gonna think poorly of you, or you, or like shaving.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have it's winter time, but I have to shave my legs because who's gonna think differently of me, or am I gonna be less of a woman to people for not practicing this really expensive
Right. Oh my gosh.
routine or habit.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think, we're taught from a young age about what our role in society is. Stranger danger is to protect me from the creeps, but I'm not allowing myself an opportunity to find a nice guy to take care of me if I don't look a certain way. So I should be inviting male attention by doing things to my body that would make me aesthetically pleasing, like shaving, as you said, wearing makeup, not being overweight, not being past my prime, and not being too loud. So it's this really hard box that they want women to fit into. And personally, I've been struggling to get out of it because I think there's more to me and more to every woman than just being an ideal woman in a man's eyes.
I have a lot of strong feelings about the being too loud or
Mhm.
taking up too much space.
You can see
Which,
it on public transit. We make ourselves as small as possible. And men.
cross your legs, your arms are in, men are out there and they're like,
Yep.
which is funny to like talk about, but like, I mean, it's true. Like if you go on a light rail or a bus, like you'll notice it.
Right away. And it doesn't matter where you're going, if you're going to Highlands Ranch or Denver, like it's the same experience everywhere. Women are shrinking themselves and trying to not be noticed, and men are just spreading out and doing their thing.
Yeah. I think that ties into the idea of taking up space. A lot of the negative reviews are on fat phobia, which I think we both had kind of like a lot to say on it, or at least like, I mean, it's something to discuss. But it falls into that same line of women should be small and petite and quiet, and if you're not, then you're
and
like,
nobody's gonna want you.
yeah, which isn't true.
Well,
Clarify.
I have some quotes that I pulled from the book to kind of discuss that, because I was noticing a lot of the negative reviews were accusing the author or the book of being fat phobic. So I think one of the quotes that people take issue with is, "I fight all day for control of my body, for when to eat and how and when to stop or risk fatness and undesirability." So I think that's the quote that most people were like keying in on. Maybe they even stopped reading at that point, which would have been a mistake, which we'll talk about in a bit. Like I admit, like when I first read it, I had kind of a visceral reaction to it, and it didn't like really feel good to read that, since I guess you would say I'm a member of that community that she's saying is undesirable. I kind of had wished that she would have sat with the point a little or challenged it, and then it wouldn't have come off as so bad. I mean, what she said, it's not that it wasn't true, because it is true that fatness is viewed as undesirable. Like in mainstream media, we were talking about it, like in marketing, like you see these really thin women in like bikinis and stuff like that. So we're shown through so many aspects of life that thinness is desirable, and that being thin enough and pretty enough for a man is something that you want. So I think one of the things I was just really trying to figure out is, does she agree with that statement? And that's where like some of the negative reviews came into play. But what do you think about that? At least that quote.
I mean, it's a hard quote.
It is.
I feel like, I don't know, it's hard. I feel very like conflicted on, because I see all the points around this, like fat phobic, like she didn't do it right, but then some people, you know, don't see it like that. But I mean, it's true. Mass media does not want women to take up space. They don't want them to be big. They want them to be small, quiet, petite, which is immensely unrealistic.
Absolutely.
Like, sorry, there's so many feelings.
I know, there's so much to unpack there. There's a couple other quotes that kind of like helped me reach the conclusion about what I thought Erin Williams actually thought of it. So here's one that I really liked. "I was never skinny enough. Ladies, this is a trap. There will always be too much of you. Fat, noise, age, every way you take up space is undesirable." So this is actually my favorite part of the book. It's my favorite quote from it. It says to me that, you know, she is aware of the problematic view that she had espoused earlier. I don't think she's saying that she agrees or that she thinks that fatness is undesirable, but she recognizes that society views it as such, as well as any other way women don't appeal to men, such as being too old or too loud or too whatever.
I like, I agree
Yeah.
that I really like that quote. I like that passage. I mean, I feel like I'm a fairly small person. And even I like look in the mirror and I'm like, I'm not skinny enough. And I have to constantly battle that, like, no, you're perfect the way you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, you are desirable, and like, I don't know. It's hard topics.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because the last quote that I have on this topic is she's saying, I was a model 5 or 6 times and was told each of those times that at 5'11" and 125 pounds, I was too fat. So I was actually curious to look up on the BMI calculator what that would put her at. So if your BMI is 18.5 or under, you're considered underweight. So at this calculation, she would have been 17.4 on the BMI. So she was underweight at that point and was still being told that she was too fat, which is really telling.
So crazy. And like, you can see pictures of her, like, I guess on the internet, they're not in the book, but
Right.
I mean, she's barely, I mean, small person, like.
It's absolutely insane to me, but not even just in her modeling, career was she being told this. She was being told by boyfriends and ex-boyfriends and friends, all of which are male. I will just put that out there. They were calling her fat too, or like saying, oh, like, you've gotten fat. Well, she had a child.
Yeah.
So much to unpack there. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I don't know, I feel like talking about BMI, I mean, like, that's a real struggle, I think, because like, I think my BMI is like, I looked it up recently unrelated to this, and like, it was really just in the normal, like, in the range that my height and weight are. We're not overweight, not underweight, just average. Sorry, I said normal and I was like, not normal. That's the wrong word.
See, even in our everyday speech, like, we're like programmed to think like that.
Yeah. It's like I have to like catch myself. I said normal and then I was like, no.
That is not.
Just the average healthy weight for my height and my body weight.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Anyways, and it's like, I have people tell me like, oh, you could lose a few pounds or you're gaining like a little weight. And I'm like, come on, like, what am I supposed to do? If I lose more weight, it's going to be unhealthy. And then if I gain weight, people are going to like comment on it.
Right.
And be negative about it, even though it's like unhealthy for me to go either way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And 17.4, that's crazy.
It is. And like, I've seen, like, obviously the way she illustrates herself, you can see that she's clearly not or shouldn't be considered fat. And then if you look at pictures of her, like, clearly she is not. So it is amazing to me that like men have said that to her and they made her feel bad, and maybe even made her feel bad about her post-pregnant body.
Which, she had a baby.
Yes, she grew a human in her body.
That changes stuff.
It does.
I have comments on the art, but I want to finish our discussion on how she's coming across with this topic, because on one hand, I feel like she addressed it the way she did initially, because she put out the quote that you said and then didn't quite like talk about it more, I guess. And but I kind of feel like by just saying it so abruptly and kind of like you said, you had that reaction, I mean, where you were like, hey,
oh, like that.
but on one hand, that's kind of a way to like strike emotion in your reader and strike relatability and being like, hey, wait a second, let's unpack what this means.
Yeah.
So on one hand, I think that's what she was trying to do. Obviously, I don't know, but I think she said it in a way to invoke strong feeling quickly, to acknowledge, hey, this is a thing, it's not okay. Like, we feel negatively, people, like women feel negatively impacted by this. Let's discuss it. But I wonder if maybe she just didn't quite write it or illustrate it in a way where that came across like she intended. So I kind of wonder maybe if she had approached it softer and introduced it more, if that might have come across better for her audience. But then on the other hand, if she created it softer, would it have created the impact where you're like, whoa?
Like, would it have just blended in with the rest of the narrative and kind of disappeared?
Yeah.
If you punch at the issue, which is what I think she did, it's more impactful. It resonates with you more, you think about it more, and then as you continue to read and she is starting to challenge what she said, then you're like, I get it now.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people stopped reading after that page, and that's why you got a lot of those 1-star reviews, and I think that was a mistake. If they would have continued on, I think they would have seen that she doesn't agree with that statement, but that she knows that society does.
And I mean, there's always you have to factor in that it is a memoir and it's a reflection of her. So the things that she's saying, I mean, she feels impacted by men viewing her and like what her weight is, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did kind of want to talk about, since we were talking about the art, which I just feels disingenuous to talk about a graphic novel and not talk about the art. I love how she drew it. I don't know how you feel, but it's like
fantastic.
Mostly it's black and white. Everything's kind of, I don't want to say skewed, but like everyone looks really real. Nothing's perfect. And then you get these really bright, colorful pages.
And they're like kind of jarring, but not in a bad way. I think it just punctuates whatever she's talking about at that moment and makes you like stop and really look at it, and you're like, ooh, like I want to dissect this picture and sit with this for a little bit longer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm sorry, I was like listening and like looking at the imagery. There's something, and I'm not going to show it because it's not appropriate. Which
there's a couple of those.
It's a graphic novel, and it does talk about adult topics, so there is also some adult imagery. But it would be like she'll draw pictures of like her and the guy she's currently dating, like moments before or after they've been intimate. And I don't know, she just draws everyone really realistically, and like no one's like perfect and hourglass and muscular. Like there's a bunch of random lines and like I don't know, it felt refreshing to see people just looking like people.
Right.
Even how she draws herself. Everything's just really realistic.
She really does look like that too. Like I compared, I was like, yeah, like that's a very good self-portrait.
Do you have any other thoughts to talk about on Commute?
I don't think so. I think, we've covered a lot of it without like trying to spoil it. So
yeah, without giving like too many details, because I really think this is a book, and I feel this way with a lot of adult graphic novels. Like the best way is to just experience it.
Exactly.
There's something so different about graphic novels and the way that dialogue and imagery plays out. I would recommend this.
Oh yeah. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads just to bump up the score because I think it's good and people should read it. And it is
Right.
uncomfortable, but it's okay to be uncomfortable.
I think it's very important to be uncomfortable. My personal belief is that it's great to read and experience things that are like good and fun, but it's also great to read and experience things that are difficult topics, make you feel uncomfortable. And I think graphic novels are such a good way to talk about those topics.
Absolutely. Like I said, they're just so approachable that even someone who's not like a big reader would want to pick this up and even just enjoy it from a like an artistic standpoint, for example.
I also feel like my my personal closing thought on this is it is my dream at some point to write a graphic novel memoir of my life. Not necessarily to like publish, but sort of just
For yourself.
a reflection for myself, and for like therapeutic reasons. And I don't know, the more I've been reading a lot of memoir graphic novels. I read Fun Home recently too, which was, it related to me in terms of like my sexual orientation versus my gender and identity. And both of those books felt very approachable. They hit very hard topics in very good ways. So I don't know. I've really enjoyed these graphic novel memoirs, and I think people should read them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would guess that would be my closing thought too, is just it's on Hoopla, it's free, you can read it on your phone or your computer. Just do
We
it.
have a physical copy.
You can get it from curbside pickup. Like, just read it. You'll thank yourself, and hopefully us too.
So thank you for joining us for this week's Reader's Corner. Please join us for our next virtual story time, which will be on Monday the 20th with Mr. Brandon, and as well next week's mystery reads with Nicole on Thursday the 23rd at 1 p.m. And of course, our next Reader's Corner, which will be Friday, Thursday.
Next Friday.
Is it morning? Like, yes, our next Reader's Corner will be a discussion on steampunk novels, which is going to be really fun. The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison with Tessie and Elizabeth. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we will see you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.